Hey, what's happening, guys? So let's get into the hunt for Wolverine. And the series that this is launching, I can already tell it's going to be pretty huge. And I say that because I like the way that they're going back and telling a story that kind of weaves between these stories that we've seen already. Because from what I can tell from all the issues that I read so far, the one shot, it seems like it picks up right after the Wolverines series. And for you guys that's been spilling for a good minute, you remember back when we talked about Logan, when he teamed up with X-23, Lady Deathstrike, Sabretooth, literally a team of Wolverines, and also Mystique. But you guys remember when everyone came together looking for Logan's body, only to find out that they were being used by Mr. Sinister, who not only set them up, but blindsided them and tore Logan into pieces. It was like one of the most savage moments ever. It was pretty gruesome to watch. So I'll just leave a link in the description. Because I know if you haven't seen it, you want to see it now. It was pretty crazy. But what I'm going to do in this video is piece together, or partially in this video, because it's going to definitely be a playlist. But what we're going to do is piece together a number of the issues that tie in together for the hunt for Wolverine, both in the one shot and also with the issues that follow along as they tie in with the other issues that flow with the story. Kind of similar to what we did with Dark Knight's Metal. And we'll just have to wait and see if this is just as good as that, because it has the potential to be. Especially with the super mysterious way that the Wolverine series ended and all of the unanswered questions we have between that time all the way up until Marvel Legacy issue number 1. But things like that I'll dive into as we get more information before I get ahead of myself. Because per usual, I want to talk about the facts that are established before I go in head over heels into the realm of speculation. So with that said, where the hunt for Wolverine begins, we just pick up with the Reavers, and they're in Alberta, Canada, heading to the location where Wolverine's body is trapped in adamantium. And for them, this is just a job. They're doing this to get paid, but at the same time, when they arrive here and they actually see Wolverine in the state that he's in, and for them, it's really a huge callback to much of their history, and really all the trouble that Wolverine's given them over the years. But that alone will be another video for another time. But while a lot of them are going back down memory lane, like, man, after all we've been through, look at him now. And some of them are even debating, like, should we sell all of it? Like, can we keep some of this adamantium from ourselves? Like, we could use some of this in our upgrades. Because keep in mind, the Reavers, they're not that good at their job. In fact, the last 3 jobs they screwed up miserably, and it was so bad that the people that hired them didn't pay them. So at this point, they're damaged and needed repair. And that's why Pierce is here like, no, we need extensive repair, which costs money. So after we take care of repair, then get back at me about some upgrades. And it's almost like you're trying to throw some new pipes on a pogo stick, man. Like, no, it don't work like that. But either way, with Wolverine's body being here, you really got to go back and read Wolverines, that series. I got to go back and read it myself. It's been a while. But it was pretty crazy. Mystique hulked out at one point. Siphon got unleashed and got hold of Mr. Sinister. And for me, that was one of those moments that was probably funnier than it should have been. Because when it happened, Mr. Sinister was just like, what the hell was that? Like, what is that? Because Siphon, he feeds off a healing factor, and he was kind of that wild card that contributed to the team of Wolverines getting away. But when he appeared and Sinister and the Wolverines were teleported to another location, the reason that the team of Wolverines didn't get destroyed again really had to do with the X-Men showing up and just taking the battle to the next level. But it was here where the X-Men took back Logan's body with the help of Skell and Phantomole, I believe. I may be butchering her name, but chronologically, that was the last time we saw Wolverine's body up until the short teaser that we got in the Marvel Legacy one-shot. But when the Reavers are here moving his body, or attempting to move his body, they hear a bamf, and they're like, oh no, that ain't good. And for these guys, it really isn't. It's a lot worse. Because after the X-Men got Wolverine's body back from Mr. Sinister, Ford set up an alarm system so the X-Men would be notified if anyone came to this location looking for Wolverine's body. And initially, the X-Men were just tiptoeing in. They didn't know who was there, or they weren't 100% sure that it was who they thought they were. But Colossus, who I'm sure is the only one who saw the footage before they left, but Colossus told Nightcrawler, I'm pretty sure I saw a bone breaker from the Reavers. Because you know he got them crazy looking legs and he keep his back arched. You know how he be looking crazy? I'm playing. He ain't say it like that, but he did recognize him, and that's what gave them the idea of who was there. But because the Reavers figured out pretty quickly that they had company, Pierce had to switch up the plan last minute, telling Scylla just to use the molecular rearranger here on the spot so they can get a sample and just salvage the rest. Because keep in mind, these guys are not in the best of shape. The X-Men have their heavy hitters here against the likes of Colossus, Storm, Firestar. It's not gonna happen. And so now on both sides of this, just picture this, the Reavers, they're part cybernetics, and that part that is cybernetics for most of them is damaged severely. And we're talking about damage from 3 jobs in, no pay, no repair. And because of that, these guys are desperate. And in a fight, desperate is dangerous. And on the other end, you have the X-Men who are like, okay, we are in the middle of nowhere. You want to throw everything at us? We're not worried about civilian casualties. We are going to come at you just as severely. And with time not really on their side and Colossus just about to grab Pierce by the back of his neck, Scylla gets in and it's an empty shell. And man, I just got to tell you right now, like the Reavers, they just have like the worst luck. Just can't win for losing. And I can just imagine the look on their face, looking at the empty shell, then looking at each other like, bro, don't talk to me. Like, don't say nothing to me. Like, this feeling for them at this moment is all too familiar. But to better explain first how Wolverine got out of here, we gotta go back to when his body was first brought to this Canadian cabin as a tomb of sorts for Logan's body. And you had a number of people coming here to pay their respects, and some of which you really wouldn't expect. Like Mr. Fantastic, when Wolverine's healing factor was deactivated, he went to Mr. Fantastic for help. And it's not like Reed brushed him off, but he didn't do everything that he could to help him. And Reed felt a huge sense of guilt, like had he done more, Wolverine possibly could have survived. Like a million things are running through his head. And because everyone has their different relationship with Wolverine, their reaction to seeing him like this is very different. Because whether you particularly liked him or not, you had to respect him. And we talked about on this channel a number of times the connection between Jean, Cyclops, and Wolverine, and even between Wolverine and Storm. Because when you go back to a Wolverine without his healing factor, in a moment like that, that was one of the roughest times for him, emotionally, more so than physically. And Storm was one of the few people that connected with him in that time. And for her, she just can't help but think about the way he died such a horrible death, and for her it's just unsettling to leave him here like this. And Cyclops, his dry humor is so spot on, because he's like, we put him on a pedestal. Like, no, really, literally, we put him on a pedestal. And they debated the idea of taking him inside the adamantium and just burying the whole thing. But Colossus was just like, no, wait, I have another idea. Which was pretty freaking genius. And that idea was to have Kitty Pryde phase him through the adamantium shell. And to Logan, Kitty Pryde was like a baby sister, man. Like, they were very close. Like, they have a very extensive history. And because of that, I kind of feel like James Hudson and Kitty Pryde may be coming together down the road, but we'll talk about that later. But with Kitty agreeing to do this, she's pretty fearful about it because when that adamantium melted over Wolverine, it fused with him. And because of that, for her, this was a very tricky process because she had to be careful to reach in and only get what was him, but on top of that, also not leave his adamantium behind. But she actually pulled it off, which was very impressive. And this really gave them the best of both solutions because one, it granted them the opportunity to give him a proper burial, but at the same time, also leave a memorial for him. And this gave the X-Men either option to mourn his loss. And for Kitty Pryde, like fast forward to after the Reavers opened up the adamantium shell, while she's there talking to Colossus and he's standing there in his romper, it's like when he's not organic metal and he turns back to skin, you just happen to notice how much skin you're seeing. But anyway, with Kitty Pryde, because her and Logan are so close and he's like that big brother, that mentor, even though he's buried, she frequently visits him and talks to him because the X-Men are truly a family, man. Man, I miss the 90s. But this time when she goes to speak to him, she sees the same cloth that he was wrapped in, just waving like a flag not too far away. And if I had to guess, it had to be like a few weeks or maybe in a month since the last time she came here to see him. Because she reaches down into the grave to feel if he's there, and he's not. And the reason why I assumed that amount of time, because the grass is growing back over it and everything. But when she reaches in there and she does not feel him there, at that moment it's like, okay, here we go. And then we just skip forward to Wolverine just impaling some dude, and this is more than likely him being weaponized by somebody. Either they found out where his body was buried and they pulled some procedure to quicken his cells and reactivate his healing factor, or if somehow he made it out on his own, his memories weren't intact, he ran into the wrong people, and they ended up using him. And as far as time frame between when he was left or taken, this may have happened right after the funeral, while the dirt was still fresh. And with Kitty Pryde constantly going back to see him, just naturally with time it covered back with grass. And as far as the flag that she saw that he was wrapped with, that may have been him coming back, seeing her there, and just leaving it. but that's just speculation, who knows. Almost slipped into the realm just then. But with this happening, this is how the word started getting out about Wolverine, the actual original Wolverine, being back out there, very much alive, but just nobody knew where. And this sparked like a number of things in motion. Like for one, Kitty Pryde went out looking for help wherever she could. She went to Tony Stark, she went to Daredevil, really just going to whoever she felt like could be useful in figuring out his whereabouts. But for the record, she definitely went to Daredevil first. But with Kitty Pryde reaching out to Daredevil, who in turn reached out to Detective Frank McGee, this was just one side of the news that was quietly spreading, because others were finding out one way or the other, some of which like Lady Deathstrike, who used to work with the Reavers. But as far as Frank McGee was the first person that Daredevil went to because he knew him to be a very good detective. And just as a super quick spill on his origin and his abilities, he was once a detective and a very good one at that, but before he was just human. And then he encountered the Terrigen Mist, became inhuman, and now he pretty much has 2 DSLRs for eyes. It's pretty crazy. But what's pretty wild is when they have this conversation and Daredevil tells Frank McGee that Wolverine is missing, Detective Frank is like, which one? The old one, the lady, the blonde, the android? Like, could you be a little more specific? And I loved when he said that because there are a lot of Wolverines out here right now. And I can't wait to get the original Wolverine's reaction when he meets these guys and Weapon H. But as I had mentioned earlier, Lady Deathstrike found out through her sources because she used to work with the Reavers, and in turn she told Sabretooth, and they met up with Doc in Manhattan because all 3 of them to some extent have unfinished business with Logan. And the way that this is going, it's like you have a number of teams who are searching for the original Wolverine, which is going to be pretty exciting not after long. But there is a lot that I want to say about where this is going, and I'm just going to have this playlist just keep going about everything, and not just my reaction to how it unfolds, but also my thoughts on where this is going in relation to Infinity Countdown and Weapon H. So if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe so you can catch the spills every week, and don't forget to hit that bell up top so we can squad up in the comments. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Alright, later.